I'd like to welcome everybody to Tech Tuesday. I'm Jim Bush, one of the support managers here at Datalink, and I'd like to thank everybody for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us today. I want to get over some quick housekeeping details, and then we can get this show started. Throughout the presentation, Datalink Field Engineer Chris Bragg is going to be responding to any questions you may ask. We're going to send the Q&A transcript to everyone after this presentation is over, so you'll be able to see the questions that everybody else has asked. The recorded version of this event will be available online shortly after the live presentation. You'll receive an email with a link to view that archived. If you have any questions after the event, please send them to techtuesday@datalink.com, and we'll answer them as promptly as we can. And at this time, I'd like to introduce Paul Weaver. He's a Datalink Advanced Support Engineer with over 19 years of experience at Datalink and over 3 years of experience working with the NetBackup Appliances. So as long as you're all set, let's take it away, Paul.
All right, thanks, Jim. Welcome to today's event on the NetBackup Appliances. And today's presentation is really going to be targeted towards both those who are wanting to learn more about what the appliances are from a technical standpoint versus a sales standpoint, as well as for those of you who have appliances already installed and are familiar with them. This will be today's agenda. We're going to cover the role of the NetBackup Appliance, talk about managing it as well as patching it, and then we'll talk about performance tuning and basic troubleshooting. Now, we could spend days talking about each of these in depth, and we don't have that time on this presentation. So I'm going to try to cover the highlights, and hopefully each of you will find a few key takeaway points that will help you in doing your jobs and working with the appliances. So let's start. Okay. The role of the NetBackup Appliances, most often the 5200 series, which you see in the middle, or should be seeing in the middle, is configured as a media server, but it is also capable of being a master server. Usually what we find in the configurations is that the 5200 series will be a master server in a remote environment as like a DR site, and then the 52 or the 5000 series or the 5000 series storage servers. These are traditional pure disk servers versus the 5200 series, which is running the NetBackup software. But the 5000 series line is used for storage pools in upwards of 192 terabytes, which is much larger on the back end. And so Symantec provides currently the 5230 and the 5030 appliances. You can see here some of the differences. The 5230 line has a max capacity of 76 terabytes, while the 5030 appliance with 6-node configuration is expandable up to 192 terabytes. And you can kind of see the other stats here. And then let's just jump right in, because we have a lot to talk about on managing the appliances. Symantec provides both a web interface and a menu-driven interface for managing the appliance, and you can either use what they call the CLISH, which is the command line shell that Symantec provides, or you can use the standard root shell, which you can see here. Hopefully that's coming up on your screen. When you set up SSH, you will initially log in to the appliance as the admin user, and then if you're on the 5200 line, you would just go to in your main menu, you go to support and then maintenance, and then type elevate to become root, and type in the maintenance password. And then on the 5000 series line, you would go to the admin menu and the SU option. And we'll talk about each one of these in a little bit over the course of the presentation. But we'll get started by using the web interface. And there are lots of places where we can jump off talking about the appliances. But initially, let's talk about configuring the alerts. The appliances have an alert mechanism that is built in. And on the 5000 series appliance, you would go to the installer page. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. But if you notice here, there is a configure alert. And on the alert, when you click on that, it will bring up a web page where you can configure how often the appliance is checking itself and whether it's creating an SNMP trap or whether it's creating an email for any alert that might be generated. And then to do that from the command line, you would just go to the support menu, type in email. If you type in email and a question mark, you'll see what is on the screen. It'll give you the options to enter with a little detail. And then you just go and set up the appropriate mechanism that you want to receive alerts. Now on the 5200 line, when you log into the web interface, you will see a settings tab, and under settings you can go to configuration, and then you can see there's an SNMP server tab, SMTP server tab, which are the same options on configuring the alerts. And here from the command line, you will see these as well. Now, one of the things about the alerts is that there are several different ways of monitoring the alerts. You can either hit the web page of the appliance themselves, or if you're running the NetBackup Ops Center, Ops Center will also hook in and monitor the appliance from a hardware perspective. Excuse me. And here, to kind of jump in on the managing aspect of it, this is for the 5200 line. You can see the tab, and it will show you a layout. You can see here tape drives that are attached to this particular appliance. We can get into troubleshooting more later, but when you see this is a good indication of is the appliance seeing everything that it needs to see. Also, from the Manage tab under the Storage is where you can identify the partition sizes of the appliance. Now, you cannot adjust the root file system, but the storage file systems and the catalogs are tunable, and we'll talk about that more in a little bit. But I bring that up now as I feel it's a lot easier to manage the storage side from this particular window. And to note that each appliance, whether it's the 5000 line or the 5200 line, will come with Symantec Storage Foundation product, which allows on the back end the resizing of the volumes. Now, there are certain limitations on how and when you can resize, but you do have the option if you need to tune the file systems a little bit that you can do it from here. And as well, you can do this from the command line or from root. From the hardware perspective on managing the appliances, there's not a whole lot necessarily to do. Again, the alerts that we set up before are the mechanism that the appliance uses to send alert notifications. There's also a call home feature that is built into the appliances where when it's provisioned on the Symantec site, as long as you have that internet connection to Symantec's monitoring site, the call home feature will periodically call home. By default, it's every 15 minutes, but as we saw on a previous slide, that was a tunable setting. And a lot of this slide and the next slide, when it talks about hardware, if you're running Op Center, you will also see some of this information in Op Center. And this is generally the hardware level information, where you can monitor the disks, the fans, the status of the RAID volume, temperatures, and all that. But if you notice on the bottom right, Symantec has thrown in a monitoring line for the transaction log, or the queue directory, on the deduplication appliances. And this gives kind of a status health of the queue. And if anything is going on with the queue, you can come here to see when the last time the queue processing cycle ran. Yep, right there. Okay, now on the 5000 series line, if you go to the main web page for the appliance and go to the monitor section and then system, you can see the same type of information is identified here. And then also, since we're on this web page under monitor, there is the alert notification section, which is right next to the system. And here you can see any alert that the 5000 series appliance generates. Now, this can be software as well as hardware, but these alerts will be sent based upon the notifications that we set up at the beginning. Now, one of the things that differentiates the two lines of appliances is that the 5000 series appliance runs a traditional pure disk install as part of that bundle, and each pure disk system can be connected with up to 6 others to form what's called the storage pool. Now, it's not as easy when you're managing the appliances just to go to one appliance and do like a DF and see the disk capacity or how full it is, like you can on the 5200 line, because the pure disk software combines each of the nodes and its pool together to make one larger pool. That's how you get the 192 terabyte upper capacity on this line. Now, in order to see how this pool is doing all together, you would go to the report section, and you can look at the capacity dashboard, which is what we're looking at here, and as well as you can see some of the other reports. Now, PureDisk has the ability to go in and tell you the characteristics of the files that is being stored in the disk pool. Now, when you're running you're running it in a NetBackup environment with this as a PDDO server. There's not much difference because all you're going to have are NetBackup image files. However, if you are running the 5000 series appliance in a standalone traditional PureDisk format, this data mining report that we see here will go in and tell you the characteristics of the size of the files, the age of the files, the number of versions, and all that type of information that is mined out of the database for the storage pool. And on the 5000 series, you can see here that we do have to schedule that. One of the other things about managing the appliances is how it's connected to the network. I'm going to touch on this just a little bit because we're not really talking about how to configure the appliance in this presentation. But if there is a need to change how the appliance is being connected to the network, and we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get into tuning, but you can come here. Now this is the 5200 series appliance. Under settings and network configuration, here you can see which networks are connected. If you have a 10 gig network, you will see that here as well. This particular appliance was not connected up there. But here you can make the adjustments to your network setting without having to go into the CLISH or into the appliance as root and modify those files from that way. Going on to jump back to the 5000 series line, you can see here now this again is the installer page. You will see at the top the URL, which is just the IP address of the appliance /installer, and then it will redirect to this particular page. This page is used more for configuring the appliance versus managing the appliance. But this is where you will go if you need to change the network characteristics. You can see these are the different options. And we'll talk a little bit more about the IPMI in a minute when we talk about patching. Now, to make a few more comments on the 5000 series line of appliances, especially when using it in a standalone pure disk manner, pure disk allows you to go in and give users different access rights into the pure disk environment, similar to what OpCenter does. For those of you that are using OpCenter, when you're using this as a PDDO destination in a NetBackup environment, you typically don't need to go in here, but we're going to talk about it because this can also be used in a standalone pure disk storage pool. So you can come in here to settings and configuration, and then under user management to define who has access and what kind of access they do have. Do they have the ability to make changes to your policies, or can they just view the information? Do they have access to their clients and their location, that type of stuff? And all that can be set here. And to touch on the 5000 one more time, the 5000 series appliances have the ability, because this is pure disk, to do different kinds of event notifications and escalations. And you have the ability to customize your particular appliance to your needs. And that is done through this particular interface. Now to talk about this a little bit more from the CLISH side, or the command line shell, I'm not going to dive in a whole lot to what's in what menu and what's in another. They are different, and they can change from appliance version to appliance version as Symantec desires. But if you do have both lines of appliances in your data centers, which is very common, to have a media server being a 5230 and then have a 5030 storage pool or a group of 5030s on the back end to have that larger pool. So that is a common setup that we are seeing. And so just to make a few notes on the command line interfaces, for those who haven't already jumped into the management aspect of the appliances, there are little things. For instance, on the left is the 5200 CLISH, and things as simple as going from menu to menu or even logging out. On the 5200, you would use exit to log out of the CLISH and return to the previous menu structure. So these are each different menu options that you hear that are available, and if you click on like monitor, it'll take you into the monitor menu, and then to return, you would type return. However, on the 5000 series appliance, there is no return. It's actually exit. You're exiting the menu to go back to the previous menu, and then if you want to log out of the CLISH, you use log out. So they're little intricacies that if you're using both, you want to watch out for. Just because sometimes you might make a change thinking you're on one when you're really on the other. And so to keep up with our speed, the next topic is going to be patching the appliances. We all know that software is not perfect, no matter what your sales rep or company might say. There are always improvements that are coming out or bug fixes that are coming out. And the way that you would patch your appliance is similar whether you're on the 5200 or the 5000 series line. But there is a little bit more involved. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit more detail, which we will do here. For patching the appliances, each appliance comes with a remote console access, as most enterprise class devices do these days. And it's best to patch the appliance through this remote console. And that is termed, Symantec uses the IPMI functionality, which I believe is an Intel-based remote management console for their access. And that interface has a separate NIC on the back of each appliance that you can access. However, it's not a common interface that people go into, so you don't always remember the IP address that may be assigned, or maybe the appliance did not have that interface set up initially because everything was being done from a console when you were sitting in front of the box initially. So both CLISHs on the appliances have an IPMI menu option that you can see here that will allow you to show or change the IP address of the IPMI port. One thing that you'll want to make sure is that either this network connection is on a routable network, so you can get to it remotely, or is on some kind of network or crossover cable on another system that you can access to, kind of like a jump box or something like that. But you want to have the ability to manage these remotely, especially if your appliances are in another data center. If they're in the same data center as you and you can just run downstairs or run through the door to get to the appliance, that's one thing. But these come in very handy when patching. You can also do power management through here, through this port. So let's get back to patching though. When you do connect to the IPMI interface, you'll see it, depending upon the line of the appliance and the version of the IPMI software firmware that's in the appliance, your page may look something similar to this or one of these screenshots. And what you will do is you will have that initial login, and then you will either have an option to start KVM or to go to the remote console or control and click Launch Console. Now these consoles are Java apps, if I can use that term here, that will load in your browser for remote console. So it's good for access. However, it's not good for things like cutting and pasting, which you can see in just a little bit more why you might want to. Okay. But before we kind of jump into here, the appliances, when Symantec creates a patch for the appliances, if I can say it that way, they create a bundle. So what will happen is that when a software update comes out for either NetBackup or PureDisk, the tendency in the past for Symantec has been to release an appliance update several weeks after that. Part of the reason for that is the appliance contains more than just a software patch for NetBackup or PureDisk. It will contain an operating system patch or patches. It can contain a storage foundation patches if that needs to be updated, because that is another Symantec product that is on the appliance running underneath NetBackup or PureDisk. It can also contain updates to the CLISH, which is what we're looking at here, as well as firmware. If there's a firmware update for a hard drive, or has been common lately with the appliances, the battery backup units, Symantec will push out those roll-ups in the appliance update. Now, there will also be emergency engineering binaries that Symantec calls EEB, and those can be applied here, but when you do have one of those, your support representative will give you instructions on how best to apply those. But to get back to the main patching, each appliance gives you the ability to contact Symantec and check their website to see if there is an update to install. Here you can see that I have run the check, and for this particular appliance, and that the update is the latest 2.5.3. This is on a 5200 right there. And then you have the ability to download that particular patch. Now, things like this, you can either do through an SSH session or the console, or actually even over via the web page. The reason I like using the CLISH here is that you can actually cut and paste the name instead of having to type out the full name of the patch, which is what would happen if you had to use the remote console. Now, downloading the software patch does not mean that you're installing it. So if you have a maintenance window scheduled to update a patch on the appliance, you can go ahead beforehand and stage that patch by downloading it and then having it ready to install. And the reason I kind of highlight that is that the patches tend to come in multiple parts. I've seen them up to 5 parts. Because of the size, Symantec will break them down into chunks. And then when you type download, what you'll see is the appliance saying it's downloading the first file, and it's downloading the second file, and so on. But it will automatically put those files together to make the end package. If you were to download the patches from the website to your PC or to another management station, you would have to put those together through a simple copy or cat command and then send those to the appliance. But doing it from the appliance will do that automatically for you. Actually, let me jump back real quick. One of the other things that you can see here is that in the menu options just above, there's a share feature. And you have the ability to, as I was mentioning, to download the patch to your management station or to your PC and upload it. If you were to go through that avenue of sending the patch to the appliance, what you would do is you come back to this menu, type in share space open, and then that will open a CIF share or NFS share that you can mount to your PC or to your Unix or Linux station, and then transfer the patch to the appliance that way. For the, well, to continue here, once the patch has been downloaded and you're ready to go through the install, you can see here that you can list the versions of the appliance, one that is installed and two that you have downloaded. And this is the part that you would want to do through the remote console. Now, I've done it from here just because it was easier for me. And from here, you can see on the 5200 line of appliances, you would just type install. Let's see, do I have an error? Yeah. Here, you would type install and then the patch name. Unfortunately, when you go through the console, the remote console, through the Java session, you can't really paste that name in. So it's always a good idea to list what you have downloaded. So when you type install, you have it right there in front of you. And then if you saw for mine, I already had that appliance patch installed, so it wasn't going to do the install. But you would see it progress if it was going to apply that patch. Now also from the web interface, from the Manage tab, we saw that at the beginning earlier, and we see it again here. You have the ability to download and install the patch from the web browser too. Now to talk about the 5000 series line, patching is very similar. It's in a different menu selection. Here it's under Pure Disk and then Patch, and you can see here your different options. You can auto-download, so the patch or the appliance will go out periodically and check the Symantec site to see is there another patch and then automatically download that for you. That is not, at least currently, an option on the 5200 line, but those things can change as Symantec updates their software. But you can see here that there is a commit, list applied, list downloaded. I'll make one comment about the commit in that in previous versions of Pure Disk, Symantec would have you apply the patch. It would go through a reboot cycle, and then when you were sure everything was good to go, you would enter a commit to obviously commit the patch. But what that would do is that would take the underlying storage foundation checkpoint that had been made and remove that checkpoint, thus removing the ability to quickly roll back. Now on the latest update from Symantec, the patching process actually goes through that commit for you if it completes successfully. So you no longer have to do that. But you can see here. Now on the Pure Disk side, again, if you want to download the patch to your PC and upload it, this is how you would go through opening up that share. And you can see here that it tells you, go through patch, share, and open. And it gives you the path to access it. Now on the 5200 line, it doesn't always give you the path, though on several of the options it will. And on this appliance line, it does give you the path to access that. And when you do, and you can go through your PC, you will see this. And then once you log in, when you log into either appliance, you will either log in as the admin user if you're using the 5200 line, or the sysadmin user if you're using the 5000 series line. But here is where you would go to upload the patch. I know some people also use these directories for transferring files. I won't go into that much here, just to make the comment that sometimes these directories are used for other things, just for patches. But if you do use it for other things, for transferring logs or other files or things of that nature. Just make sure that you clear those out as soon as you can. They do take up disk space, though the appliances come typically with plenty of disk space for logs and for patches. You just don't want, you want to make sure that you don't use up all your space on something other than what it was intended. Now on the 5000 series line, you can see applying the patch is about the same, but with different menu options. Here you would just type patch and apply and the patch name. Again, it would be good to list the patch, because when you're going through the remote console, you won't have the ability to cut and paste. But then you just you follow through. You'll answer the prompt, answer the questions when it prompts you, and then it takes off and it will apply all the patches that are in that patch bundle. You don't have to do the firmware update separate than the NetBackup or Pure Disk update separate from the CLISH update separate from the operating system. It's all done together in one convenient package. Now we get to the fun part. Now, hang on. And before we jump into this section, I'd like to go ahead and mention that I know that a lot of companies either have a limited staff or don't have just the time to or resources to manage your backup environment, or you need assistance because as a sysadmin of a small company, you may be doing 20 different roles and just don't have the time to put forth. Or you may be a large organization and just still needing some assistance with managing your backup environment. Datalink does have a trained managed services team that can manage that for you, and we can do all this stuff for you. If that is something that you are desiring, it would be best to contact your Datalink account representative for more details. But now, to kind of jump back to here, I'm sure you've been thinking, great, we're getting to the golden ticket in performance tuning, or you may be of the mindset, you mean the appliance didn't come already tuned? Well, to either of these questions, I'll really say to every environment is different, and what works well for company A may not work well for company B, and vice versa. So there's a lot that can be done, and there's not, do this and everyone will see great performance, or do that and everyone will see great performance. There's not that common thread because every environment is different. We'll kind of cover some best practices here. It's best to tune your backup environment under the guidance of Datalink Consulting Services via a NetBackup assessment. That NetBackup assessment will come in and take a look not at just the appliance, but at the network, at the SAN, and at the clients, and do an end-to-end analysis and make recommendations. Now, you can either have a NetBackup trained professional service team member perform these tuning for you, or you may choose to implement these yourself. But either way, it's good to understand that it's not just the NetBackup appliance that we are tuning. It's part of a bigger picture. Another thing is tuning should be performed in incremental steps. Make one change, test, retest, confirm that it had the impact that you want in testing. And don't forget that testing includes backup and restores. Sometimes you can make a change that has a positive impact on a backup, but then a week later, when you go to do a restore, it's not performing as you expected, and you're wondering why. So when you are going through performance tuning, it is best to make sure that both backup and restores are working as expected and that the change has made a positive impact. And document everything that you make. Any change that you make, document. We'll see an example of a chart in just a minute, but documentation is key because as great as we think we are at remembering things, inevitably we'll make a change, not document it, and then 2 weeks later forget we made that change, or we go on vacation, and are totally not thinking about it, and then come back and think, well, I know I changed something, and I know I changed 10 things. What were they? So document everything, any changes that you make. And I can't emphasize this point enough. Always know what a setting does before changing it. There are settings that you will see coming up that Symantec will allow you to change that can have a significantly poor impact or reverse impact on what you're wanting to do. So always know what a setting does before making that change. And again, to reiterate, document that change when it's made. And tuning is dependent upon the environment. May not work best for company B. Is there other things involved? Other network configurations? The switches may be different, the SAN may be different. Lots of different components go into the backup environment. So what works well in one may not always work well in another location. And again, that reiterates what we were just talking about. And another reason for performance tuning is that environments grow. We aren't in an age where data is shrinking. We're in an age where data consumption is growing. And as companies acquire companies, or you add another SAN array or multiple SAN arrays, or you move from physical servers to VM servers, and now you have 200 servers where you had 20 before, it's always good to go back and look at the performance of your backup environment and of NetBackup, or PureDisk if that is the line that you're using. Because tuning settings that work for an environment running 100 servers or backing up 100 servers may not be the same settings that provide the best performance when you're backing up 2,000 servers. So those are always things that you can go back and need to revisit as your environment grows. And again, the key to a successful performance tuning is testing, 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 and documenting. Here in this particular slide, this table comes from a Symantec presentation that they did at this year's Vision Conference. The link is at the top of the page. And it shows you how they charted out changing a setting. In this particular case, it was the number of data buffers disk and the size data buffers, and how they mapped out each change and the results that went along with it. One thing that they note in that presentation, which I've noted here, is that it's best to look in the logs, like the BPTM log or the BPDM log or the BPBRM logs, those types of logs, for your numbers, for your performance numbers, rather than the activity monitor. Because in your activity monitor, you could have times for snapshot, time for image validation. You can have different times that add into the overall performance or length of time that a backup runs or a restore runs. And so it's best to reference the actual numbers in the log files. And you can see here that in all their testing, that what they have highlighted, the 512 data buffers and the 1 meg size, worked best for this particular environment. And again, this presentation will be available afterwards, so if you haven't written down that link, you can always come back and reference it. And it's good to actually go and look in that. Symantec does provide a number of performance tuning documents, that being one. There's a backup and performance tuning guide that they have out as well as other tech notes. Now, in this particular slide, we're hitting the web interface for the 5200 appliance or 5200 line. And these are making the settings that the previous slide was just talking about for the number data buffers disk. Now, if you can see under the arrow just a little bit, the default is 30. This will depend upon the amount of memory that comes or is available on the server that you're running. Symantec appliances come with specific configurations. So usually there will always be plenty of memory. There should always be plenty of CPU power up to a point. I mean, you're not going to have necessarily one appliance running 100,000 jobs in a night or 200,000 jobs. You may have to break out the workload accordingly. But for the majority of configurations, one appliance will be, the CPU and memory will be sufficient for that. And I digressed a little bit, but let me jump back to here. So the default, all that to say that the default of 30 is very low for the appliance. So typically, when our professional services team goes out, they'll start with a number like 500 for the number of data buffers on disk for the appliances, and then tune from there. If you have Symantec come out, professional services come out, or their appliance team come out, they typically start on the higher end. They start with 1,000 and adjust accordingly. But those are good numbers to start with, as opposed to 30. Now, there are formulas that are available in the backup planning and performance tuning guide that will show you the effect of the number of data buffers and the size data buffers and all that, and how much memory that they will use. So you don't want to go wild here, but you'll also want to realize that you can tweak out a little bit more performance out of the appliances other than the default settings. And to kind of touch base on the CLISH, what you can set in the web interface can also be set in the CLISH, and this is an example of that. So either way that you prefer, or you can use root and go in and edit the files yourself. Any of those options is available to use. Besides the data buffers, storage lifecycle policies are quite common in today's backup environments, and are very useful. But as the number of images and the number of servers that are getting backed up increases, tuning the storage lifecycle policy behavior will also be needed. And this particular page that you see here is the settings that can be adjusted for the storage lifecycle policies, and as well as from the command line. Now, what works best in your environment may be the default, depending upon the size, but as you grow, again, you want to go back and revisit the settings to see, is everything getting done in a timely manner? Are the duplications or replications happening as they need to, or are they running into our backup window? You can also, with the latest version 7.6, schedule when the SLPs are running. So you can give them a window just like you would a traditional backup schedule. And all that can be tuned. To touch on this page a little bit, this is the deduplication setting page, as you can see, on the 5200 line. These settings are available We're tuning on the 5000 series line, but this is really where you can shoot yourself in the foot if you don't know what setting does or what each setting does. And so, just a word of caution: be very careful in what you change here, and document what you change, because you can change the segment size that the deduplication pool operates in, but just changing that randomly can have a drastically bad impact, if I can use that phrase. So just be very careful again. Now, if you are troubleshooting, and Symantec does want you to increase the logging on the plugin for deduplication, you can come to this web page quickly and change the verbosity that that the plugin is logging at. One note of caution: if you do that, these logs can get big quickly, especially when they're up around the verbosity of 10 level. So if you do make these setting changes, the appliances do come with plenty of log or space on the log volume, but note that can be eaten up very quickly if this is not turned back down. So if you do make a log change, just remember to come back and change it back down. And again, these can all be done from the CLISH. One other option that Symantec provides when using multiple appliances, a lot of times what is common, I guess that's kind of redundant, but anyway, what's common with companies that have multiple sites is to have one site primary and another site as a disaster recovery site. And you can have an appliance in both locations. Well, when you're doing the remote replication, if you're using the air functionality through NetBackup, Symantec provides a WAN optimization setting that we're talking about here. And it actually involves kernel modules that Symantec provides, and then you just go in and enable that setting, which we'll see in just a minute. And that's going from appliance to appliance. Those kernel settings aren't in a generic Red Hat or SUSE build, but because Symantec controls the appliances, the hardware and the software, they are able to make those kernel changes in a controlled manner on the appliance. And so when that option is enabled, it can increase the performance of your replication. And in this particular example, this is a test that Symantec has done, running from appliance to appliance, with their production being in Minnesota and the replication target being in California. And by making this particular change, you can see in each of their tests there was a consistent doubling of performance. So this is a setting that you will want to enable when you have appliances at both locations. And to make that setting change, you can come in through the CLISH, as we can see here, or you can go back to the web interface and just enable that check mark there. Again, even though Symantec provides it, it's always a good idea to test to make sure that you're getting the expected performance increase. And if for some reason you're not, then to disable that. Talking about the WAN or the LAN in this particular instance leads us back to the network settings. And I know we've talked about these before, but the interfaces on the appliance can be tuned. If you're running in just a single NIC configuration, know that you can bond the interfaces together depending upon the network switches that you're connected to. And it's always best to talk with your network team about any of the changes that you're going to make so they know to either configure their router or switch accordingly, or to let you know, hey, that switch can't do it. We need to do this other switch. And you can come in here and set the bonding and set the type of bonding that you're doing, because there are different flavors of bonding, and it all depends upon what your network team is running with as to what you'll need to use. But you can aggregate the NICs together for better performance if necessary. And this is, again, from the command line, how to do that. And from the 5000 series, going through the CLISH, you can set up bonding, and it does give you a description of the different modes of bonding. And to set that up here. And as well as from the web. Now, this is the 5000 series going to the installer page again, but there you would do the change the network settings from the web if that was your preferred method. And again, to touch base on the resizing of the disk partitions, your initial configuration may have been expecting, your dedupe pool to be size X, and you were going to utilize 90 or 80 to 90% of that. And because of changes, your disk pool is a lot smaller. There are certain limitations. There are limitations in how you can change the disk pool. But you can come back here and revisit, am I utilizing the space that I need to? Maybe you had an advanced disk pool that was 10 terabytes and you're only using 5 of it consistently, and you want to give that space over to the dedupe. You can resize accordingly here. So that is always a good way to go back and revisit. To also address the advanced disk, there are a lot of companies that are sending data to an appliance and then sending it off to tape, as well as keeping it on disk. The best option, if you can, is to create an advanced disk pool on the appliance, send your backups there, and then duplicate them from the advanced disk to the tape. That way, the images are not having to be rehydrated, because if you send them to the dedupe pool first, then the images have to be rebuilt as they're being written to tape, and that just lengthens the amount of time that it takes to write those images to tape. And what a lot of companies are doing is sending them to advanced disk and then making 2 copies, one to the dedupe pool and one to tape, and that works a lot better. I'm going to cover this section real quick because I know we're coming to a close. But there are ways of gathering logs. They're similar to the patches. There is a data collect script, which can collect hardware-level information. And this is how you can get the data collect output off of the appliance. It shows you here. This is on the 5200 line. On the 5000 series line, you would want to run this from a command line. It is not currently built into the CLISH. And here, again, when you go to connect, what I found that is easiest is just to use the IP address when mapping out the share as well as the credentials, and then putting in either admin for the 5200 line or the sysadmin for the 5000 series line. And that's just what I found works best for me. And then again, you can see here the menu structure for the logs. And if there is need for logs, your support representative will help you and assist you in getting those off if needed. I will make one comment here on the 5000 series line, is that on the export or the share here is called log. On the 5200 line, it is called just a little different, but can sometimes cause confusion. And again, you just connect in and to pull your logs off. Now I'm going to cover troubleshooting, but maybe not as you expect, and then we will be finished. So if you bear with me just another minute or two, we'll make it through. So for basic troubleshooting, now I'm not covering how to do log, how to read each log and find out what is needed, but these are questions to ask. Has it worked before? If it has worked before, what's changed? Does the error indicate that the issue is on the master server or the media server or on a tape or disk? Can you see the error in the web application or the CLISH? If you can't get to the web application or the CLISH, that may be an indication of what's going on. The appliances are Linux, and so any OS level information as well as CLISH information will be found in the messages file. So it's always good to go there to see, is there an OS level issue that is occurring? Like, are the tape drives falling offline? Or connecting a lot, or things like that. Can the appliance see and communicate with everything it's supposed to? Network or SAN. These are all questions to ask into helping identify where the job is failing at. And that is a lot of times the most significant part of troubleshooting is just identifying what failed and then being able to make a change to correct that. And the activity monitor is in the job details is a great place to go to look for errors for specific jobs, but don't forget the problems report. That can give you a bigger picture than just a single job, and can also give you more details sometimes, and then as well as the troubleshooting logs. NetBackup is heavy on DNS, on lookups, and it implements its own caching algorithms to prevent overloading the DNS, but if something changes in the name resolution, either in DNS or with host files, that can have a significant impact on NetBackup. So that's a question to ask. Has something changed with the name resolution? And then a simple question, is everything running that should be running? Sometimes the little things we tend to overlook, looking for the harder things. I know we've covered a lot, and there's a lot more. We could spend an entire week on troubleshooting. But these links are a good jumping off point to learning how to troubleshoot the appliances or the NetBackup software. I will highlight the late breaking news links. Those are for Symantec to post patch fixes that they have publicly released, or to let you know that, hey, we know about this particular issue. If you're experiencing an issue, hit those pages to see if it's already a known issue, and then we can go from there. And that wraps up this session. I know we had a limited time, but hopefully everyone has a nugget or two or more that you can take and chew on to make your jobs a little bit easier.
Thanks a bunch, Paul. I appreciate you putting this together for us. I'd like to thank everyone for attending, and just as a reminder, you can still ask questions after this event by emailing us at techtuesday@datalink.com. Our next session is going to be scheduled for November 19th, and we're going to focus on the Datalink StorageScape solution. Invitations will be sent out the first week in November, so be sure to mark your calendars now. I hope everybody has a great day, and thanks for spending an hour with us. Thanks, guys.